Welcome to the Neurostimulation Podcast. I'm Michael Passmore, Clinical Associate Professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. The Neurostimulation Podcast is about exploring the fascinating world of neuroscience in general and clinical neurostimulation in particular. We talk about how it works, the research behind it, and how that research is being translated into treatments that can improve health and well-being. So whether you're a healthcare professional, a researcher, a student, or someone who's really interested in how the brain works and what we can do to help it to work better, this podcast is for you. My mission is to make the science accessible, inspiring, and relevant to your life. This podcast is separate from my clinical and academic roles and is part of my personal effort to bring neuroscience education to the general public. Accordingly, I would like to emphasize that the information shared here is intended for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical guidance. Always consult with your healthcare provider to discuss your specific health needs and treatment options. By listening to or watching this podcast, you acknowledge and agree that any decisions related to your healthcare are your own responsibility and should be made in consultation with a qualified health professional. Today, I'm really excited to talk to Jennifer Cain Birkmose. Jennifer is a fascinating, innovative, and pioneering entrepreneur who has co-founded a business that offers concierge-style senior services in order to help seniors stay living at home independently as long as possible. Her company, VivaValet.com, offers all kinds of integrations for helping to keep seniors home longer and safer, such as in-home adjustments for customizing home occupational therapy setups, for example, to enhance kitchen safety and bathroom safety, renovation type adjustments. But importantly, Jennifer's company also helps to integrate technology into seniors' lives in a way that's accessible and effective. So we had a really interesting conversation about what her firm offers in terms of helping to keep seniors at home safely and for as long as possible to optimize their independence, their autonomy, and their self-determination, and how her expertise in disparate areas like improv comedy has been also instrumental in terms of going into settings like assisted living facilities and long-term care facilities in order to help improve the lives of seniors who may be suffering from mood problems or loneliness problems, and having these kinds of strategies implemented in those facilities has really been instrumental in terms of helping to foster a sense of meaning and community for those people later in life. It was a great conversation. We talked also about how Jennifer's been involved at the level of the United Nations in terms of advocating and promoting seniors' health. So I hope that you'll stay tuned. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Welcome back to the Neurostimulation Podcast. Today's guest is a powerhouse of purpose, service, and reinvention. Jennifer Cain Birkmose is a global health leader, an entrepreneur, a technologist, a UN advisor, and a trained improv comedian. All of that in one dynamic human being. Her work spans continents and causes, from transforming the aging experience through co-designed technology to holding a board position with Medicines for Malaria venture. Jennifer is also the director of Improv at Boutique Theatre in Switzerland, where she brings humor and humanity into both creative and corporate spaces. She and her co-founder are revolutionizing aging through a tech platform that supports older adults, whom she calls olders, to live independently at home for longer. So get ready for an energizing, insightful conversation about purpose-driven innovation, aging with dignity, and the power of yes. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Michael, I am so honored to be on your show. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited for our conversation today. I think we're going to have a good one.
Definitely. Absolutely. Maybe we can start by you introducing yourself to the audience here and perhaps starting off by telling us about this really interesting tech platform that you're building for optimizing the aging experience. And yeah, I'm really interested to hear about it.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for the very generous introduction. That was really lovely. And yes, all of those things are true. That's all things that I'm doing either currently, and many of them will say juggling, like in a circus, we're juggling all those balls. One of the balls, and probably the biggest ball of all of them, is this co-founder relationship I have around the company that's called Viva Valet, which, as you mentioned, is a tech platform for olders to access services that they can utilize to live at home independently. I think the easiest analogy is it's like Expedia for older people, and that it's an Expedia type of platform that you can use to find everything that you need in order to stay at home. So what I think, Michael, very often in the world of entrepreneurship, I, like every other entrepreneur, is in the game to do something different because I'm trying to solve a problem that I'm very passionate about. And usually those problems are my own. I think the more passionate you are about it, it's usually something that you're personally feeling the pain from, or the need to overcome and come up with some type of innovative solution. So that's exactly what the case is with me and my co-founder around aging and age tech, is that we are living a great distance away from our loved ones who are aging, wishing that we could do more, knowing that we are what we call stuck in the sandwich generation, raising kids, trying to launch them into the world, killing it in our careers, and also having older adults that we need to care for. So we needed to come up with options that we could utilize from afar, and also that our olders could do to live at home independently.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's such an interesting and fascinating, excellent idea in terms of just having it as a platform that someone can relate to, like Expedia, and allowing the support and the personalization with, it sounds like an a la carte sort of system where people can pick and choose in terms of what they need in their particular situation. Can you explain a little bit more about how that works, that particular platform?
Absolutely. I like that you call it a la carte, because it's both a la carte and it's also, I would say, concierge style. And that, let's say you or your loved ones wanted to come up with a kind of package that would enable services to live at home. So let's say your loved one, sorry, my papers are blowing away. Your loved one lost their ability to drive. Very often that's what we see above the age of 75, for example, as loved ones start to lose their ability to drive. So they still need to move around. They still have doctor's appointments, and they still have life to live. So one of those things is rides that we offer. We also offer in-home cleaning. We offer in-home tech support. So a lot of tech training. And interestingly enough, that's our fastest growing vertical, where olders are really needing to be a part of technology to access banking, access healthcare records, those kinds of things. We also do in-home safety modifications and handyman services, those type of things. And then lastly, food delivery that's basically tailored to the individual needs of that user. So we're doing that, and that's based currently in Illinois in the United States. We're expanding that business out to be a concierge service, which is something like, if you call in, it's a monthly kind of membership where you could call in and say, I often, the scenario of myself of my loved one has had a fall, they've been having surgery, they're coming out of the hospital, I need help, and I don't actually know what I need. I don't know where to find it. I don't know who to ask, and I don't know who to trust. So in those circumstances, that is where we shine brightly, both in the concierge service and also in our service-based business that we currently have running in Illinois. Because in order for a company to be listed on our platform, they have to pass some really high hurdles around trust, because that's actually another huge part of what we've come to learn in the process of building this company for olders, is that they'd like to have support, and many of them are saying no thank you, but there comes a point where they know that they must have it. The number one currency of whether you're going to be able to have a sustainable business with older folks is whether you're going to have trust or not. And that's, if you're selling it to the adult children, or if you're selling it to the olders themselves, you have to show a way of showing your work of how are they trustworthy. So we have these metrics. We have criminal background checks that we're doing on all of our providers. They have to take out additional insurance packages. They have to go through a kind of academy of how to care for olders and how to serve olders. They take a written test and they take practical exams in order to get qualify to be a part of our business. And once they're actually serving customers, we have our eyes on them. So they have to check in with us, they have to check out. We call our users immediately as soon as they're finished. We can't have body cams inside the homes for privacy, but we have all these check-in and check-out procedures. So you have this end-to-end trusted service, which is the answer to the call that we hear in a lot of senior services, because quite frankly, Michael, and I'm sure you've heard this in the work done, there's a lot of fraud committed against olders. There's a lot of abuse committed against olders. So this is where we as a series of values are really strongly trying to find ways, hardwiring to avoid those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. It's really important for sure. And I think particularly what resonates, because I've worked with seniors for over 20 years now. And I think a big piece of it, and their families as well, a big piece of it is that because it can be so overwhelming, as you say, for there to be that initial consultation service where, your expertise can help to guide the questions that prospective clients are even asking in terms of what would you recommend in this kind of situation. I'm sure that's extremely valuable because it's so overwhelming and people don't really understand what would be even the first steps into how to navigate all the complexity of the system.
All the complexity of the system. I come from a healthcare family myself. I have very prominent physicians in my family. I've been in all these different kinds of layers of healthcare systems and creating access and in drug development. And even I get lost, and even my family gets lost. And I say that not to say we're fancy. It's that, gosh, we come from a tradition of not just understanding the healthcare system, but being active part of leading, creating some of the regulations for it, delivering healthcare. We get lost. And when our loved ones are going through it, they're getting lost as well. So it's with great compassion and passion I have is to reach in and help those who need that support in those moments. And often I get asked things like, I need to find a transport service. I need to find even just an intermediate step down service or an assisted living type of service, or I need a skilled nursing skilled nursing facility between hospitalization and going home. How do I find that? So we're able to actually do those kinds of safety checks, do the background checks, do that for them, and then come up with solutions and then try to get them in those kinds of options. So I find that really is helping a lot of people that are in a moment of crisis when you don't necessarily have your thinking mind on. This is a neuroscience podcast, so we're living in our amygdala in that moment and we're panicked. So how do we then say, look, we've got you. We understand that you're going to need some support, and that could be short term, and it could be over the next quarter, or it could be the next 6 months or to a year. Here's the package that we can propose that to get that forward. We can do the bookings for you and all these kinds of things and get them on those lists. So really, I'm happy that we're able to provide that type of support. And again, it really depends. Our customers come to us in a variety of different ways. I describe the situation that I personally find myself in because I've had to support an older who is very independent and didn't want to make a plan necessarily for these kinds of crisis moments. And so we as children had to jump in and do these kinds of things. And so the companies learn from that as well. And we've been able to hardwire some of those processes. And actually, Michael, what we find is that like in the research that we've done, 89% of at least Americans, I don't know if that covers all of North America, but when we think of North Americans in general, 89 to 90% of people choose to live at home or wish to live at home.
Yeah.
Yet this kind of crisis scenario I'm suggesting, 85% of those people who do choose to live at home or wish to live at home haven't made a plan. And I think that's where, in a surface like this, where you're cruising along at 30,000 feet and everything's fine. All of a sudden, boom, you have a fall, or boom, you have a health crisis and your family needs to step in. We can support with that. Also, another way that we're coming to market is that we're doing B2B type of partnerships with those agencies that are, let's say, international, national, that are providing in-home care services, and even some senior living communities that don't have all the services that we can then provide. So very often when I see people who've moved from living in their own homes, maybe even into senior living, they're happy that they have services like rides, but when they arrive in those communities, they realize, oh, the rides are only 2 days a week. So there's from 9 to 12 on a Tuesday and Thursday. However, maybe you have physical therapy or you have your oncology appointments you need to get to on a weekly or biweekly basis, and it's not compatible with the driving schedule you have in that senior living community. So that's where we can gaps. Often also things like extra food delivery. If it's in a senior living community versus assisted living, we might be able to be a part of handyman services and modification, those kinds of things. And the tech, I think, is universal. What I'm discovering is the journey of tech with seniors has been one of the more enlightening ones, I think, in my lifetime, which is deconstructing unconscious bias that is existing about olders in general, which is you're older, you can't do X. You're older, you don't have interest in Y. You're older, you're incapable of learning something new, for example, technology. And my experience of it, Michael, is that the work that we're doing in our like community-based programs or also in the home, it's quite the opposite that we're finding is that olders are super hungry to learn and willing to learn and wishing to learn. It's just that they need a little extra time to learn how to do that because they are very aware that if they're not participating now, they're going to be shut out of, for example, online baking or online food ordering systems. Like if you go to a restaurant, you have to use an app or a QR code. But I think really the critical one is healthcare record keeping. That's all digital. So also I need to say, because I think it's important to mention, a lot of the things I'm talking about are things we've discovered through running the business and being in market for almost 2 years and having daily conversations with our customers and their families and having had this experience of being in market. We also, before we ever designed anything, actually 4 years ago, we did an ethnographic research study with older folks. And I just find, I'm going to say it because it's such an unusual scientific approach to designing a startup from the ground up in any way for that matter. Because often if you hear about ethnography coming into research, you might hear it around fast moving consumer goods, like Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola. Those are big brands that use ethnography because they want to understand how people, their hopes, dreams, fears for their lives and how those products can alleviate or fill in those gaps. We did the same thing with olders ourselves. This is that before we started the show, we talked about writing a scientific paper. So I'm submitting this now for publication in a medical journal in the US, just to talk about the descriptive aspect and the value of doing open-ended research in this community to understand what are hopes, dreams, fears, and aspirations for living at home independently. Because I think especially in the entrepreneur space, entrepreneurs become very passionate about doing something. And if they don't understand their customer very well and passionately, I guess curiosity with great passion and consistency, if they don't look into those areas and really try to understand from the ground up their user's experience, they might design the wrong thing. We're really proud that we actually did that, and it changed the way we came to market. It changed what we designed. And also, as we were designing our tech, we designed it with older people. So you're asking about technology and olders. We literally have a group of people between 70 and 93 now who actually do the beta testing on all of our tech and helped us design all these things and did all the checks that we needed to along the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, you're anticipating some of my questions about all of this. It's just fascinating. And I wanted to just early on in our discussion, I wanted to just clarify for viewers and listeners the name of the platform. And I'm going to put links in the show notes to this content, and I would encourage people to check that out. And we'll talk a bit about that again at the end. But maybe just before I ask some more questions about that, can you just explain for us the name of the platform and like the website basically? And then, yeah, we'll come back to that at the end also.
Absolutely, no problem. The company is called Viva Valet. You can find us at www.vivavalet.com. And so how that's spelled, I know you have also probably French-speaking audience, but Viva and then VALET.com. We're operating in Illinois, in the United States. We are now expanding up to other regions with the concierge service, which is the phone-in service. We also have a partnership in India, so we're not opposed to going to other geographies. We've been working with the Ministry of Health in India to also replicate this ethnographic research, which we found to be the same. I think that's also worth saying is the results in terms of descriptive understanding of hopes, dreams, fears, aspirations of living at home independently. They were the same across cultures, which shocked us. We thought that they would be different, but they're actually the same. So we've done a partnership with the Ministry of Health and the Indian Physicians Association and insurance provider to try to provide some of these services also in Mumbai. We are excited. We'd love to come to Canada.
Yeah, no, I think it's so exciting. I think there's a huge need for that, obviously everywhere, in Canada included. And I'm really impressed as well because, again, from my work experience, it's pretty clear that navigating the sensitivity of a lot of these issues is a big part of it, right? It's a personal, anything related to one's family and one's home. There's an intimacy to that really requires a lot of sensitivity in terms of helping to just match what a person thinks they need with perhaps what they might actually need, and then how an external agency, external helpers, non-family caregivers might then become integrated and helpful in that way. There's just so many different variables, and I can imagine that a real sensitivity is required in order to try to meet these needs that you've discovered in terms of the ethnographic study that you're talking about.
Yeah, very much. I think in designing, and for any of your listeners, I really encourage you to think about how could you be of service as an entrepreneur to this population? Because what we've found is with, as you say, the sensitivity, the compassion, the empathy, if you are a business that offers a serious solution that is solving a problem and delivers all of that problem solving business delivery with all these qualities, all these values, we find that customers that are this in 70 and above, they tend to be extremely loyal. We see this across multiple verticals with this population, but especially in health and in the support services for living at home, they're very loyal. And so it may be a little bit more difficult to find them and to what we say customer conversion. But once you have them in your business, they like to stay because it's this sense of comfort. And again, if you win their trust by them saying, yes, I'll join, they will stay. 90% of our customers stay.
Yeah. And I think that's great to hear. It makes a lot of sense. It's also really, again, makes a lot of sense. And it's great to hear what you're talking about just now about the actual user interface and how you have the seniors who are actually doing the beta testing, which makes perfect sense. And so what I was understanding is that there's a kind of a dual interface experience. So can you, without, I know it's maybe a bit challenging without actually being able to show on the screen, but can you maybe just try and, we've got listeners as well on the audio podcast side. So yeah, is it possible for you to just give a rough picture in words as to how the experience is in terms of that dual interface concept?
Absolutely. So the dual interface concept means that if you are someone like yourself or myself, we're adult children, we use tech every day. Of course, we had to learn how to use it, and we're essentially tech native. So for us, it's not uncommon that we use Amazon or we use any type of apps to navigate our day on a daily basis. We don't necessarily need anything out of the ordinary to navigate on a website. And so we've designed our website for that user to say, if you're an adult child, you can go through lickety-split, go through the order process. Your customer flow is very simple and very normal, like you'd say. If you are, for example, an older person, you can slide right on the top and go to easy mode. And easy mode has basically, again, this is a neuroscience podcast. It's utilized the thinking from neuroscience, which is let's limit decision fatigue. Let's limit the things that are on the screen, make it very simple, very clean, very easy to navigate, make the navigation from start to finish very clear. One thing that's, as a customer experience interface, always making sure that the price is clear as you navigate. Maybe you add a feature or reduce a feature of what you're ordering. We always have a price, so it's never a surprise. That's the other thing, is no surprises, no fraud, no surprises. And so, yeah, with easy mode, it's really all about being accessible, making sure that we passed all the accessibility kind of hurdles, reducing options, reducing extra bells and whistles. And I think also what's important to explain to your listeners is as you age, the acuity of color contrast is reduced. So what we've done is we've made sure that we had extra high contrast in colors. We've also avoided colors that can be muted as we age. We start to regress towards a mean, and again, the color acuity fades, which means that we develop almost color blindness. So we've designed with that in mind. The other thing, although it's not what it is, that if you tell us what you need, you tell us what you're looking for, what you need. Let's say you're looking for a cleaning service. You've got 3 rooms in your house. You live in this type of situation. You don't need a deep cleaning. You just need a regular cleaning, et cetera. Maybe you need laundry support. You've got stairs. You can go ahead and we can put that in, and you tell us where you live with your zip code, and we'll offer you the solution. And again, this is about reducing decision fatigue, because one could say, couldn't I just Google this and Trustpilot it? And yes, however, what we know is that one of the fundamental challenges, in addition to trust, is that olders have a deficit of time. They know that they're on the fine line and the march towards the inevitable. And they know that their time is precious. And we as youngers might say, don't waste my time. They're on an entirely different level when they say, don't waste my time. So what we hear from our users, and also from our research that we did from the very beginning, was, don't waste my time. Don't mess me around. Don't waste my time. Don't make me do 10 additional steps that don't make sense for me. Just tell me what I need. I told you what I need. Just tell me what it is. And so because that was part of that, originally that was an easy mode feature for olders, but actually it's pretty much for everyone, is that this is the option that we have for you. And we've essentially said that these options are all equivalent that we have inside, because we've done all the pre-vetting for you. We've done all the quality vetting. We've tested the services ourselves. We've had to observe their services and watch their services and double check everything. And then we get all of the feedback on them immediately. So that from, again, designing a business with the neuroscience in mind. How do you make the user experience as effortless and frictionless as possible? It really makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's inspiring. It strikes me also that in talking about reducing the risk of seniors being taken advantage of through online frauds and what have you, the more that a senior person is feeling comfortable just in terms of using the technology, probably that just raises their own awareness about how to avoid things like phishing emails and various different problems like that.
In fact, phishing emails on top. So the biggest, I would say, most popular requests, if we call them requests, like we're a DJ or something, but like the requests that we get around training would be, how do I share a photo? Texting with my grandchildren, how do I share photos, or how do I access the family chat? Those are often things that we get. Things like we teach them how to make a Spotify playlist, which is delightful to them because they don't know that they have this jukebox in their pockets. The next, how do I prevent fraud, and teach me? And I will share a personal story, because everything that we're practicing is something I'm practicing on an individual level in my own family. So with my older, I will go through, and when I hear new updates of things that are threats, I will go and I'll walk through, this is the threat, here's how you manage it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I went to the Apple store with my older, and I was so impressed that he was teaching the Genius attendant saying, hey, I'm an older person, I'm 88, and this is a risk. And when you're talking to older people, can you please teach them this and this? That, I think, is one of the most beautiful things about technology, but in general about olders, is that they're so passionate about sharing their wisdom in every way. So they learn something new, and their first instinct is, I'm going to share this knowledge, and I'm going to share this in my community.
Yeah.
Especially about like how to protect themselves from phishing emails and fake AI scams, et cetera.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I guess that's the next issue that's looming, is just deep fakes of voices, family voices, and the need for families to agree to a certain phrase or something that can be used to guarantee the identity. It's unbelievable. And it really is disheartening when you think about all of these unscrupulous people that are trying to leverage this technology to take advantage of people. It's awful. Yeah.
This is precise, and I'll speak to it because you mentioned it. This is precisely the kind of thing that we're scanning for and that we're sharing with our customers, and also obviously with our own loved ones. The things to watch out for if you're receiving a phone call, for example, if it's check, is it an unregistered number or a number that you're not accustomed to receiving from the loved one? I, for one, only use FaceTime with my loved ones because I said I'm never going to call you on any other mechanism than FaceTime. First of all, we like to see each other, but also if it's a phone call, already something suspicious, number one. Number two, if there's some type of, it could be my voice, very likely. My voice is everywhere on podcasts, for example. And so if my voice is suggesting I need something urgently, that is the number one thing that is never going to be true. And then we also do suggest for ourselves and for our customers, always have a keyword that you can respond to. Go back to that. But it's really disheartening because I see this even in my own company. I've had moments where I think there was an occasion where there was someone impersonating me, texting my employee saying, I'm at this conference and I'm speaking, which I just had been the week before on a platform and speaking at a congress, and I lost my wallet. Can you please text me or transfer money? Uniformly, no one is ever going to do that. No one's ever going to ask for that. No one, especially if it has anything to do with urgency, that is the number one trigger. It's not happening. I've also, I'm sorry, I hope this isn't too much of a divergence, but I really feel super passionate about it because I think it's important for olders, especially because they're so vulnerable. And I also see people that are not older that are falling victim to these things. I even had a former colleague who's now working in cybersecurity and banking and also walked down that path with the bank. So for example, if you're an older person who's listening to this and your bank calls you out of the blue and suspects that there's some type of fraud activity on your account, hang up and call the bank back. Thank you so much for the call. Thank you. It's always nice to say thank you. Thank you. Call the bank yourself, and the bank would have registered that phone call if it was an outgoing phone call from the bank. They would have it registered and they would be able to also pick up the file immediately. That's the number one port of call in any of these things.
It's a very important tip, and I think something that's very easy for people to do and just to remember and not to, there's this part of, I think it's just part of what scammers take advantage of is this human proclivity to want to be cooperative or to trust. And then if the anxiety comes, it's obviously they've put a lot of thought behind their scams in terms of the psychology of how to best try to hook somebody and hoodwink them. But yeah, for sure, hanging up, or even just making an effort to develop a personal, real kind of like face and name relationship with a banker to be able to say, phone them, and then, or the manager at the bank or whatever. And so for the adult kids involved to be able to also be part of that loop as well, and to try and make sure that there's a bit of oversight as much as maybe is necessary in those sorts of situations, acting as a liaison with the point person at the bank and the senior in the family.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in the UK, there is a AI, and it's called AI Granny, I think is what it's called, AI bot, who is an older woman herself. And you can use her to, I don't actually know how it works, but what the function is that they will talk to the AI or they will talk to the scammers. They'll talk to the people that are trying to gather this information or talk to telemarketers. And the whole goal is that they wish to keep those people tied up on phone calls with that individual granny bot for a very long time. Oh, sweetheart, I don't understand. Could you please explain again? That's very interesting. Tell me more. Oh, so they lean into the information, and their goal is let's keep those people tied to something so they're not hurting other people. So
Right.
I love that solution as a tech solution, as a defensive and offensive solution to protect olders. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, and yeah, for sure. I think anything that can be done to distract or otherwise just prevent these, again, scammers from taking advantage of vulnerable people. And in terms of, it's clear that you're so knowledgeable and passionate about this kind of work, and you've taken that to the next level in terms of advocacy at the United Nations. So can you tell us a little bit about this RP Commission on Aging Technology?
Even hearing you say this ARP and UN Secretary General Commission on Aging, I can't believe I was a part of this. And I was so fortunate to be able to be myself and my founder, Marian Perina. We were invited to consult these groups that were gathering insights with government, academia, industry. For example, Microsoft was on there. There was a really amazing gerontologist from the University of Toronto as well. And we were there to create a white paper on broadband access, Wi-Fi access, design, inclusive design for elderly. We had three different white papers that we created. And really what it was meant to do was informing the UN Secretary General's office on how to work with UN member states to find intergovernment, academic, and let's say industry-based solutions that could be more inclusive for older adults as they age. Because we know that by 2050, we have 1.3 billion people who are above the age of 70 globally. So we're tripling the number of olders we have on the planet. And so it's not just oh, granny. It's actually, this is going to be the largest part of our population globally. It's going to be the part that's holding majority of the wealth and also the majority of voting power. And so as we age into those groups, we're going to need to have solutions that are designed also from a tech perspective. As we become more and more online for everything, we need to come up with solutions that are going to be accommodating and they're going to be inclusive of those populations. So it would be from a design perspective, it would be from like broadband access. So how do we increase access as well for areas where you might have, let's say, access deserts. And if you have a kind of a block or gap between lack of access and the desire for telemedicine, because as you go into those age groups, you're going to need to utilize more healthcare. And if you're more and more remote, you're going to need to have these type of solutions for remote care, be they AR, VR, those kinds of things. So finding solutions that we could even direct to low orbital, so I know it gets very technical very quickly, but like low orbital satellites that are being launched to be used to direct for populations that might need to be accessing resources. And that's that's making the bridge also to the Global Health Initiative when we're looking at malaria surveillance, when we're looking at disease outbreaks in, let's say, sub-Saharan Africa, where you have these large parts of the geography that have no Wi-Fi, for example, or no satellite, or access deserts in terms of satellite capability, trying to find ways to make that coverage. So all those things were feeding into that. And it was just, gosh, Michael, it was such a wonderful experience. We were so grateful that we had the wisdom of the Microsoft leader for design for, I think, what is it called? Accessibility design, which is those who are designing for folks with disability. And I think the love story of design and designing for a constraint like this. I just would say it's a design constraint where the person doesn't have vision, or the person has one hand, or the person doesn't have mobility, or the person has an auditory acuity. Those are the beautiful moments of design, because you have to innovate to make it work for that population. Once you fix for that constraint, that human lack of ability, actually everyone benefits because you've now made that. So that's, for example, texting. That's where texting comes from in general, is that was for folks that were limited on their ability to hear, for example. So those are beautiful examples of how we can understand ability, disability, accessibility, and how the love of the customer, really, it's truly a love story. Understanding the customer, understanding their unique needs, where are the gaps in how the world works today, and then thinking creatively with love and compassion, how are we going to bridge that gap? That's what all that's for. And so again, that's what this UN Commission was all about, is coming up with bring big minds together to come up with ideas. All those white papers, by the way, are available on our website. So you were mentioning earlier our company, Viva Valet. So if you go onto our website, we have our blog posts. We have a lot of videos that I've put out there that support, maybe they're clips of podcasts, and maybe there are other elements we use for education. We've got those white papers there. We'll also mention, if you're going there, I have something called Take Action Tuesday, which I particularly love. It's like a 1 minute little TED talk that we give, or I give, which is for caregivers to say, what's one thing you can do this week, one action that you can take that will support you in your caregiving journey, or support you in your journey with your older. So again, it could be a cybersecurity edition. It could be a conversation to have. It could be about medication management. But anyway, that's something that you can find on our website and also on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It sounds like such a broad and important resource for sure. And it's amazing because, as you were talking about earlier, in terms of the growing connections with India and places outside of Europe and North America, and how there's probably some overlap in terms of the global approach with the United Nations that way. And it is so interesting, as you were saying, about how you're identifying these commonalities, which on the one hand is surprising, but on the other hand, it makes sense, right? Because I think across cultures, people, as they age, there are commonalities, obviously. And so then there would most likely be common problems that lead to, again, in broad strokes, common approaches, but with personalized tailoring as well at the end of the day.
I think the unifying red thread between populations is the desire for independence, the desire for agency, and the desire to have your own decisions directing your life, be that through the use of how to utilize healthcare. If you can't make decisions for yourself, being able to have something in place to make those decisions in advance. And I would say 80% overlap of, I wish to do this alone. I wish for no one to step in and tell me what to do. If I receive help from my children, for example, I would like to receive help as I request. I would like to not have someone step in. And I think that those threads are common across cultures, because some have said, oh, there's certain cultures, maybe in Asia, where you're more communal based, where you're more family based, and you expect your children to be involved. You may expect your children to be involved. However, the unifying thing is, if you expect your children to be involved, it's for the request that you have, not step in and take away your own agency. And that's a real fine line, is that I often see in our customers that there are adult children that wish to jump in and just solve the problem, because that's easier. And it's the same thing that you might do as a parent when you have a young child. I'll just step in and fix it. It's fine. I see that my kid's going to fall and I don't want them to fall. So I swoop in and I take the risk away. Or what is it? The snowplow parents that clear the path. Congratulations, your kid's safe. They didn't fall and bruise their knee today. Or congratulations, your older didn't fall today. They didn't learn. Coming up, it's a really huge fine line. And what I've often been asked is, if there's one action you can take today, what is it? And the action I say is, ask permission. You want to get involved in your older's life? You want to help them? Wonderful. That's wonderful. And what a gift to be able to offer that and say, Mom, Dad, Auntie, Uncle, loved one, whoever you are, who's an older person, how would you like me to support you? How can I support you? Would you like me to support you? I'd love to. How would you like me to support you? And that is the switch right there. Or if you have a loved one who's going through a serious disease process, because that's often where this transition happens, is that you have your olders are fine and there's no problem and they're completely living alone and doing great. And all of a sudden they have a very serious acute and or chronic health diagnosis that means that some of their independence is going to be compromised. What I always tell my customers and my ecosystem is, I'm terribly sorry this happened. How would you like to be supported? That's the magic.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. It speaks to the importance of respecting and promoting agency. You've used that term, which is a very important term, but also it really relates to the understandable desire for all people to want to have their dignity respected, because I think that's a huge fear of people as they age, is that, will that equate with a loss of dignity and self-control? So yeah, just showing a lot of respect to that, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Will I lose my dignity? Will someone care? Sounds like a Broadway song. In fact, I think it is a quote from Rent. So as I am a Broadway nut, I'm thinking Now there's a musical playing in my mind.
That's a good segue, because I was actually going to ask this. I love the concept that I've read in your content about aging with reference and play. Can you just help us understand in more detail what that means for you?
So aging with play, and I'll just step right into it. I'm so fortunate that I actually trained in Toronto at Second City. So I'm a graduate of their conservatory program, performed on the main stage, did all those great things. So thank you, Toronto. Thank you, Canada, for, I think, making my dreams come true as a human. And having those insights on how to perform improv comedy, sketch comedy, how to create those things, the tools that we use to make something from nothing, because essentially that's what improv is. You, every single time you perform, you are working with your ensemble to create one common hive mind where you're anticipating each other, you're listening, you are co-creating. You are using all the tools that we have to quiet our amygdala and really get those executive functions connecting with others on stage. We're using those skills to create something which delights our audiences. Now, those same skills that we use in improvisational theater are equally as important in the caregiving environment and also in how we interact with olders. In fact, I've run a comedy school. I've been running it for the last 4 years. I've trained hundreds of people who are now using these skills on stages. I also do a lot of work with executives who are trying to fight their, let's say, trying to develop their executive presence, working on, let's say, media presence as well, fighting imposter syndrome, trying to find ways to get their teams to have more ideation or collaboration. We use these tools from a leadership and neuroscience perspective to tell better stories, to connect, et cetera. Regardless of all those different folks I get to train, my favorite people to actually teach improv to are olders. It's the absolutely most rewarding group of people. And sometimes it's in the context of caregiving. I can teach caregivers how to do this because it'll enable them to have a better bridge of communication with their patients. But it's just going straight to the olders themselves. It is incredible to watch, Michael, what I see. I've done it in several assisted living facilities. And what I always see is there's maybe 3 or 4 people that are saying, yeah, I'd like to try this. And other people come and watch. I'm here for the show. No, this is a class. We're going to do this together. Oh, no, I'm just going to watch. And then about a quarter of the way through, maybe 10%, a quarter of the way through, I hear the shuffling of the chairs and everyone's coming and scooting into it's totally predictable, the great migration into the circle of wanting to do this. And then they start to use these tools to play, to listen, to interact. And I had so many directors of these facilities say, it's magic what you did, because at the end, these people are physically more strong. Like, you can see that they have like better balance. They're as if they seem taller because their posture is improved. Their eye, you can see the focus in their eyes. You can see obviously smiles and laughter. And there's something about them that seems somehow younger, like their faces are more relaxed. And so all those things are incredible. They've had a good time. They've been creating, they're interacting, but the sustained impact of that lasts for hours after one of these courses, because what I see is that I've put them in a position where they're more vulnerable, more open, and willing to share and collaborate. And as a result, they're interacting with each other. So I've had these directors come to me to say, I can't get these people to get together and talk. Maybe they have their cliques, but I can't get them to talk in a big group. I've had courses where people sit around for 2 hours and talk with each other, and all of a sudden they're recalling stories of their life and they're wanting to tell more stories. So it is just supercharged for connection. And ultimately, we talk about, you and I haven't talked about blue zones, but blue zones is often what people are asking me about. Is blue zones are areas all around the world where you've got these people who turn 100 years old. There's high concentrations of folks that live that old. And what it comes down to is we try to tweak and understand these populations. Is it diet? Is it weather? Is it the water? Is it the air quality? Is it exercise? Is it this? Sure, all those things have something in play, but the two things that really come in connection is that there's a sense of purpose And that purpose doesn't really have to be anything specific. It's unique to that person. Does that person feel like they have purpose? And do they have social connections? This is where the improv comes in, is that if you can use that, create a theater class in an assisted living facility or in a senior living facility or in the community. Jane Fonda and Ashton Applewhite, I don't know if you're following Ashton Applewhite, she's an advocate for olders. She's working together with Jane Fonda, and they've been doing research on, again, blue zones. What are things that are helping people extend their health span and have more joy in their life? And they're finding it's really getting involved in the arts. So is it fine art? Is it performance art? Is it the musical performances? Some form of artistic expression. If you are finding a way to create that as a practice in your life, it's expanding health span and it's expanding your joy. And my personal experience with the performing arts with olders is that it makes them connect with each other in the most unique way. So where that relates back to my business is that my people that go into homes of olders, I teach them these tools and I ask them to use these tools so that we have this kind of magical interaction. Like I often use the allegory of Disney. I think it's, $8,000 that a family will spend to get to Disney between the travel and the hotels and the ticketing and the food. If you're doing that with your young family, you're exhausted, you're hauling your young kids around, you better be having a magical experience. So at Disney, when you go to the parks, all of the cast members is what they're called, no matter what your role is in the park. If you're taking tickets, if you're running the rides, if you're serving food, you're called a cast member because you're part of the whole experience, the theatrics of the experience, and you are collectively delivering magic. That's ultimately what I'm trying to do with my business as well, is deliver magic, and the magic of connection and the magic of respect and reverence for olders when they receive these services that enable them to live at home independently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's just so fascinating, and it makes perfect sense just how the training of the improv helps to create community in that way. Because I think for all of us at all ages, really, no one really has a formal program for learning social skills. And I think that at any age you could benefit from that, just in terms of being able to think on your feet and have that dynamism trained into a certain extent around being quick to know what to say or how to respond or coming up with ideas. But particularly in that, I see this all the time because I work in a lot of long-term care facilities. And I think it's that difficulty in terms of how to navigate having, on the one hand, the downsizing that's difficult to, it's a kind of a bitter pill to swallow in terms of having some limited personal space, but then also being forced into communal spaces and having to participate sometimes in things where one might not necessarily want to. But thinking then about what are some of the reasons why is there a loneliness epidemic? And maybe part of it is that many people don't have the social skills at baseline, or they've just gotten into they're just used to decades of living the way that they've lived, and they've been content with that. They have their own limited social circle, and then being, boom, forced into this situation where now that's not going to suffice. And they need to be able to figure out how to expand and learn these skills that you're teaching them with the improv, for example, in order for them to be able to make these connections and to have, to rediscover some joy in terms of making those connections. That at the end of the day, they've had all the studies that show that if someone later in life could change one thing about how life has turned out, most people will say that they wish they'd maintained their social relationships with more intentionality.
100% maintaining social relationships. And this is actually something that I did recently as I think debunking the myths of aging on our socials. And that's that one of the myths is that when you're older, it's too late to make friends. It's too late to create new friendships, and whatever you've had in your life, that's the friendship account that you've had, and then you're done. And first of all, I find that's entirely false. Recounting stories that you're recounting where people are moving from being at home and maybe feeling isolated, in fact, and going into these facilities, finding ways to connect. And also the quality of friendships, and not necessarily the number, but having high quality social contacts helps people reduce their health burden. So it's positively correlated between high quality social contacts and interactions and lower sort of health consequences associated with that. So I love it. It's never too late. And I think that you can equip olders with that ability to connect in those environments. And I have seen some who have turned around. And again, our customers, we serve people, majority of them are living at home. Some of them are in senior living communities. And our goal is it's live at home as long as you can, but sometimes home isn't the home that you've lived in for 30 years. And if you've moved into a senior living facility, great. The goal is let's keep you independent. That independence is not without social interaction, but that independence is I have agency and I have the ability to direct my own life. And if you can do that and still have high quality in social interactions, then that's the magic, right?
For sure. For sure. So I'm curious then, you're so well positioned to offer us insights into things like what lies ahead. So in terms of maybe a vision that you've got for the next 5 to 10 years, help us to understand what your, predictions are maybe in broad strokes around what the aging experience would hopefully look like by, say, 2035.
Yeah. So by 2035, we're getting closer to that big number where we have, if we just look at the rate of aging today, 10,000 people turn 65 every single day in North America. And so we are moving towards, this doesn't include Canada, so apologies, but by 2050 already, we're going to have 85 million people in the US. And again, if you add the numbers up with Canada, I'm sure you're probably talking about easily over 110 million people who are living 70 years and above. So that means that the shift, so as those people age in those groups, there's a transfer of wealth in those groups. We already know that majority of assets in North America are owned by those who are 50 and above. So again, those people are going to be 75 in the next 15 years, 70-ish in the next 20 years. And so you've got an accumulation of wealth. You have a lifespan that is extended beyond what we've expected. So the retirement age is 65, but typically the period of death was 70. So we've extended that already 20 years. So life expectancy from the age of 65, i.e. retirement age, is extending to 85 in North America, or likely all Western populations. I predict that by 2035, we will have had a reform in the retirement age almost uniformly. We've already seen that in Europe. For example, I don't know if you've seen this, but in Denmark, 2 months ago, there was legislation passed that the age of retirement has now been raised to the age of 70. And so anyone who was born in December, so I'm in part of this group, if you're born as of December 1970, you must work until the age of 70. I think that in Germany, the retirement age has already been raised to 68. I'm certain that the US is going to follow suit. And so what are we going to, US, North America, we will have a retirement age that goes beyond that. So I think that we'll have massive reform in that, because we'll have a reduction in the ability to afford those populations, because they're going to be upside down in terms of the part of the population that's actually fueling those social systems will be shrinking, and we'll be having a larger dependent population on government benefit for pensions, et cetera. So you're going to have to extend the working age. That means that the work practices, corporate North America, is also going to have to look different, because you're going to have, 6 generations working at the same time. So you're going to have reform, both structural, both economic, and I would say cultural, in the way that we look at the rate of aging and the way we look at aging and employability. We've already seen in North America that the fastest growing entrepreneurial group is age 55 and above. So I think that, again, in 15 years, you will see more businesses that have been founded by those who are in that post-traditional employment phase, and they'll be doing that. And I think that, like, the travel industry is also going to be really revolutionized. And I have so many hopes and dreams for how that's going to look, but I think we're going to see a major modification to hotels in terms of accessibility of travel. I think we also might see more innovation in AR, VR type of travel, because I think we're going to have a problem around carbon footprint with physical travel. But I know that the Moonshot adventure, this is sponsored by Peter Diamandis and Richard Branson and Elon Musk, where they're throwing millions of dollars at a question. This has been one of the recent moonshot ideas, which is what's the future of travel when we don't travel?
Mhm.
So that could be a new category that's coming both from an environmental consequence perspective, but also accommodating people who can't physically move, but do have leisure time and wish to continue to learn. Society is going to change in a way that's very radical. And just like when you look at the 1950s, it's funny, I just did a comedy show, speaking of comedy, did a comedy show last weekend, which was the 50s. And as we were looking at the 50s, we're looking at 50s cultural artifacts, we're looking at movies and pop culture and music. And there was this, in the 1950s was the massive glamorization of the teenager, right? So when you look at 15, 20 years ahead, that's the last baby boomers were born in 1964. So now as you get into those retirement ages and above, all those folks that were part of the glamorization of teenagers in the 50s and 60s, now those are the people that are going to be older. So I think that we must have this cultural shift around them because they're the majority of the population. So I think the world will look very different in that sense. And I don't mean it like, oh, these people are older, we have to accommodate them. I think that because they're going to have resources, they're going to have the majority of the demography, so therefore the largest voting bloc, they will have political power, economic power, and the power to say enough of this bullshit. Can I say that?
Of course.
Enough of this garbage. We're not going to be marginalized. We demand to be seen. So I think the whole baby boomer generation has always been a shift in our population globally, disruptive. I think we'll continue to see that as they get older. And great for all of us, because as a result, that all the people that follow them in aging will have a different pathway. So one of the things that my partner and I are really trying to do is we're trying to design the future that we want to age into. So we're building these services now and trying to even have, it's a business, it's a solution, and I really feel, Michael, it's a movement. It's a movement of let's be different. Let's help these people live with consequence, live with independence, live with reverence. And as a result of that type of cultural shift, everything else shifts around it like we just talked about. So that's where we want to go. That's where we want to be. And I think it's going to lead to some pretty seismic shifts in how the world looks at an older person.
Yeah, and it's an ambitious and optimistic and exciting vision for sure. No, so thanks for sharing that with us, Jennifer. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about for a little while here, or any other specific things that you thought would be important to touch on before we wrap up?
I would just say a huge thank you, Michael, for having me on the show. It's been a great conversation. You are an amazing host, and you have the most incredible calming presence. So it's wonderful to be a guest on your show. So thank you for being so welcoming. And in terms of a closing remark that I would say is two things. The first rule of improv is yes and. So in that, as a mindset, just keep saying yes and. Let's banish yes, but let's use yes and let's keep co-creating together. And the second is, if you want to help your older, the first question is, how can I help you? How would you like to be supported? And get permission. I think that would be, the world would be changed if we could yes, and if we could ask permission before we jump in. That's the starting point of everything.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love it. I would underscore that also. All right. So Jennifer Cain Birkmose, thank you so much once again. I'm going to, like I said before, put the links to vivavalet.com and the other information that we've talked about, the research, the white paper, information relating to the United Nations program that we've talked about that you've been involved with. And just would really encourage viewers and listeners to check out your content and reach out to you, your team, if they have any questions or interested in starting a conversation to get some help and some insight from all that you have to offer. Fantastic. So again, Jennifer, thanks so much for showing us that the future of aging doesn't have to be sterile or lonely. It can be full of play and the importance of dignity and human connection. Yeah, I'll definitely be watching closely to just see how your work and your initiatives are going to continue to reshape how we think about aging. And as you say, the yes and mindset. I think that's these important but simple tools are going to be, I can just see how it's has the power to help to give people that agency to be able to, in some ways, reinvent their lives, but to maintain their autonomy and self-control and agency over time. So thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay. Bye-bye now. Great. Thanks so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate it.
High five. That was so good.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh, you are such a fantastic interviewer.
Thank you. Thanks you. That was great. I think you made it really easy for me. I think it flowed really well. And so, that was good.
You. I said it in the interview and I really truly meant it. You have such a calming presence.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
Voice is just like velvet. Again, I'm a huge Broadway nut, but I've often said Jonathan Groff, if his voice was a material, it would be velvet. Like I have the same quality. Like your voice is like velvet, very calming, very soothing,
nice.
And very welcoming. And your questions are great. Thank you for doing the great research that you did, because it also made the conversation really flow really simply and easily.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. It's just a delight to meet you, and all the best with this. I think it's so great. It's so encouraging and really impressive. Because I think part of why I was having this conversation with an entrepreneur friend of mine in the States, and I ask him questions about this kind of thing, because on the clinical side, you're in this algorithm-based kind of practice, and that's fine. It serves its purpose. But part of, I think, a lot of clinicians feel a little bit stifled, right? In terms of you can't innovate so much because your regulatory body is going to say, hey, stay within your lane kind of thing. So to get inspiration from someone like you in terms of thinking outside the box and being innovative, it's inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think what I see right now, especially being lumped in with a lot of health tech people, health AI people, is that there's so much enthusiasm and scrambling towards making these solutions.
Right.
I think what's forgotten is just the human element. Is you can create the most incredible algorithm, the most incredible tool, but where it's going to fail is if that nurse or if that physician has 5 steps in the middle of the night to access your app, your protocol, whatever, it's not going to win over a piece of paper or whatever legacy system is that they know. So again, when we think about like health tech, and if that's used towards neuroscience, if it's used to manage aging, if it's used to manage health in general, or workflow inside a healthcare system or hospital system, the competition isn't the other apps or the other algorithms. The competition is the status quo, because that's what's known and easy. And I think that's where we're getting a lot of kind of waste in the system, is that people are rushing to solve problems without understanding what their customer's how their customer navigates. So that's why I put so much emphasis on the ethnography, because that's a breakthrough to be able to understand your customers to that level of detail. I wish more innovators would do the same. We're just hoping we grow. One of the metrics that we had, in addition to obviously the financial metrics, but if we could hear from a customer, I don't know what I'd do without Viva Valet. I couldn't have modified my home to stay safe, or I couldn't have gotten my meals, or I couldn't have got to my surgery today without you. That's the reason we are here doing this. And that's what we hear every day. So we're so grateful for that. We just hope we can get the money and to survive. We're raising money. We are raising money. We've raised already 3 million, so we're raising more.
Good for you. That's great. Absolutely. Okay. All the best. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks a lot.
You too. Thanks a lot. Okay. Bye-bye. That was such a great conversation with Jennifer Cain Birkmose. I just wanted to again thank you for joining me today on the Neurostimulation Podcast. And if you found this episode interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. It really is the best way to make sure that you never miss an episode, and it helps us to reach more curious minds like yours. Also, if you think that this episode might resonate with a friend, a family member, or a colleague, please share it with them. This kind of knowledge, especially when it relates to important aspects like seniors care, it really is better when it's shared broadly, and you never know who else might find this information helpful or inspiring. For more details about Jennifer's offerings and content, please do check out her links to her information in the show notes below. And I've added as much as I can. You'll find everything that you need to dive deeper into this topic. And I would love to hear your thoughts. So please join the conversation in the comment section or reach out to us on social media. Your questions, ideas, feedback make this podcast better. Finally, don't forget to tune into the next episode. It's going to be another exciting journey into the cutting edge of neuroscience and clinical neurostimulation. Thanks again for listening. I really appreciate your time, your attention, and your interest. Take care, stay well, and I'll see you next time on the Neurostimulation Podcast.